Welcome back, Ole Miss fans, to another episode of the Rebel Talk. It's LSU week, man. It's Thursday. Vibes are high. I'm your host, Zach Moreth. As always, back with Daylan Flowers, and we're going to hit you guys with all the content you need previewing LSU. We're going to talk a little bit about Lane Kiffin's documentary. And just real quick, if you haven't seen the Knox Kiffin interview, go check it out. I posted it yesterday. It's about 7 minutes, super quick, super brief with some good information. So first and foremost, Daylan, end of the week, man, in 48 hours, we're going to hopefully be experiencing a little flyover action in the Vaught. How is it going over there?
Man, it's a big game, probably the home game of the season for Ole Miss. I mean, I think for me personally, the biggest game of the season. I say that just in terms of obviously you may consider Georgia a little bit bigger, but I think the obvious Magnolia Bowl, the history, the rivalry with LSU, losing in Death Valley last year, and then the year before winning at Oxford, and it's been a back and forth matchup every year since Lane Kiffin has been in Oxford. Every home team has won a game every year, so big game, big feel. It seems like if Ole Miss can, figure out a way to win this one this Saturday, then they're in poised position to, be a playoff contender. Obviously the season has a long way to go, but I think Ole Miss sets themselves up for a pretty good spot if they're able to handle LSU this weekend. But it's going to be a fun one. This is what you wait all summer for, what you get so hyped up for fall camp for games like this and for moments like this, for rivalry games like this, for fan bases to be talking back and forth like this. This is going to be a fun one. It's going to be a fun next couple of days in Oxford. And I think a lot of people are tuning in to Ole Miss right now. Obviously, like you said, the Lane Kiffin doc has been put out on E60. It's a great watch. If you haven't watched it, tune in. But it's a fun time right now for Oxford, for Ole Miss as well, man.
Yeah, just real quick, going off of that documentary, huge shout out. I know she's taking a couple hits this week. Landry Kiffin, arguably the biggest reason why Lane is still here and not in Auburn right now. But no, like you said, dude, it was cool to see his story. Again, I was like 4 years old and Daylan was maybe 5 or 6 during all that Tennessee stuff. So I don't really remember that. I don't recall it. So to see that in live action and recall it with Chris Lowe and all those guys who were in the facility was awesome. And then the Nick Saban interview, they got Pete Carroll. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah.
I was actually pretty surprised. I didn't know what to expect, and I learned a lot more than I thought. So going into that, and I think my final takeaway is that if you think Lane's going to leave for another job at this point, you're out of your mind. Knox is here. Layla's here with the kids. Obviously, Landry goes to school here. And this is the longest head coaching tenure of Lane's career where he's proven that he can win and get himself in the playoffs if we beat Kentucky last year. But point being, the resources and the opportunity is here in Mississippi, and he's really starting to settle in. So I think that was pretty promising to see from the Ole Miss perspective.
Yeah, it was definitely for me insightful. Like you said, I was young at the times of a lot of the SC and Tennessee things were going on, and I think it was insightful to learn the history of his dad working under him as a DC, him filling the shoes of Philip Fulmer, him being with Steve Sarkisian at USC, and then going to Oakland. I think it's a lot to intake, but as well, I think it speaks on the way Lane is adapted to Oxford. Landry is a really good pickleball player. I would say that. I've played against her a few times, but it's not just that. It's, his brother's a part of the staff and living here in Oxford now. This is a place where, you continue to hear Lane Kiffin say, I needed Ole Miss and Oxford a lot more than they needed me. And I think both sides have been able to reap the benefits of it. And again, I said this to someone maybe the first weekend, the first game against Georgia State. I was like, if you would have told me that in 2025 Lane Kiffin would still be at Ole Miss, I would have called you crazy. But the fact that he is, it speaks a lot. It speaks a lot about the town, the university, and as well what happens when the Ole Miss fan base sees something successful and believes in something, that they will get behind it and back you. And they've done that so far, and he's done a great job. Obviously, there are some things to continue moving forward to, but I know Ole Miss fans are happy to have Lane Kiffin and his staff, and I think Lane Kiffin is very, very happy here at Ole Miss right now.
Yeah, and you brought it up, but his success in present-day college football literally stems from the amount of money and the volume of expenses that he's getting from the fans. So Rebel Nation stepping up. There's no Walmart donor or Tyson chicken like there is in Arkansas. It's a collection of every Ole Miss fan, and they've been doing a phenomenal job leading into this weekend. Ole Miss is consistently putting teams out in the top 15. Now we have another top 15, should be a top 10 matchup against LSU, a game that should have been won in Baton Rouge the year before and in Baton Rouge 3 years now before this upcoming matchup. There's a lot, man. You go on Twitter, you see some of these outrageous comments, weird things that are being brought up, but that's the spirit of college football, man. Fans are a little too crazy down here in the South. That's what makes it fun. So it's going to be an awesome matchup. Lane went on Pat McAfee yesterday and said they hadn't decided a starter, despite two of the most prominent reporters in the sport reporting that Trinidad Chambliss is starting. Also, on every message board where you look, it says Austin can't walk okay. I'm going to go out and feel pretty confident that Trinidad Chambliss is starting tomorrow. On Saturday. So you can get your flags and start waving them. What do you think about that situation, Dave?
I think it's just Lane being Lane. No matter if there's actually a answer on that quarterback situation right now. You're not going to know until the game starts anyways. So I think it's just Lane Kiffin being Lane Kiffin. I think that even if Austin is, has the ability to play, I think you may see him out there Saturday, but he's not. I don't expect him to start. I think Lane Kiffin has already said that, when Austin is 100%, he's a starting quarterback, but I don't think he's 100% right now. And again, I've said this before. I don't think there's any reason to rush him. There's a bye week after this weekend, and you have the ability, which I think is a great situation to be in. And some people may disagree, but you have two really good quarterbacks and both guys that the offense has gelled around. You have a guy with Trinidad that's a little bit more experience in terms of playing a little bit longer and a little bit more age, but Austin that obviously has that raw athletic potential. And we've seen what he can do. But regardless of the matter is, I expect Trinidad Chambliss to start this weekend. He's riding a really hot ride right now. And he's looking really good over the last 2 weekends and taking care of the ball and controlling everything. Obviously, it's going to be a different type of game against this LSU defense this weekend, which is one of the best in the country. But I don't see a reason to take Trinidad out. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And right now it's not broke. So just keep riding the hot wave of your Trinidad and Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, things are going to get a little strange, I will say, if Trinidad plays out of his mind again and wins this game, despite Lane coming out and saying that Austin's going to be the starter if he's 100%. And that looks like it'll probably be after the bye week. But again, if Trinidad wins and looks phenomenal, I think things get pretty weird. Lane's got to make some really tough decisions. But before we get there, we got Garrett Nussmeier coming into town. Barrion Brown, another guy, another receiver who haunted Ole Miss fans in Kentucky last year. He'll be coming into town on that wide receiving core. They've been okay. I will say the offense hasn't, been unreal like it has in the past for LSU. You look at the Florida game, they score 20 points, even though the defense collected 5 interceptions off DJ Lagway. So there's some opportunities. I think our defense matches up nicely against their offense. But on the flip side, this is going to be, for our offense, by far the hardest test of the season. Talk about Harold Perkins and those guys over in purple and gold on the defensive side, Dylan.
It's going to be a fun one, man. I think if Ole Miss is able to attack the play action, attack the middle of the field, Daquan Wright, Caleb Odom, the tight end room, I think they really have a good chance to see some great opportunities against LSU. Look, it's going to be a schematic game, and it's going to be who wins the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And I think that's going to be the biggest important factor. I thought that Ole Miss, you think last year, had ample opportunities to win the line of scrimmage, and they didn't, which ended up them losing the game. I think it's going to be the same way this year. I think I'm not going to base too much the LSU offense this weekend based on what I've seen this weekend. I know that may sound crazy to some, but I think this LSU game is going to be a tough one. I think the LSU has the weapons to be really good. They've dealt with a few injuries, and you never know. This could be the game where they break out. I think this defense is finding their rhythm again after last weekend, but the Ole Miss defense still has some holes in terms of stopping the run game. And I know LSU has not run the ball well over the last 3 games, but they still have the opportunity to do that. And I think you're going to have to do that again this weekend if you're Ole Miss to stop the run. I think the LSU offense has great wide receivers do they have the tangibles to get open and make big plays happen? That's going to be the big thing. And as well, if you're the Ole Miss defense, how do you not shoot yourself in the foot? I think that's going to be huge. But going back to your point, man, I'm sorry got to rambling, but I think the Ole Miss offense has to really depict the middle of the field. You're going to see Harold Perkins do a lot in a way you kind of see TJ Daugherty do for Ole Miss if you're an Ole Miss fan. He's going to be on the edge sometimes. He's going to play in the middle linebacker position. He's going to run downhill and attack the quarterback. He's going to try and stop the run, but he's also going to drop back in coverage every now and then. I think that what LSU does so well is they run a lot of man coverage because they have great cornerbacks, and they have the ability to do that because their secondary is really good. So their linebackers aren't put in positions where they're trying to play zone coverage a lot, and they get beat. But if Ole Miss is able to attack that man coverage early and build some confidence to say, hey, I don't care if you've got great cornerbacks, we're going to attack you, and they win those matchups, and Ole Miss has something to set up for it moving forward in the game. And as well, you got to establish the run. I think that to get Harold Perkins off his game is to be balanced. And to get that linebacker core like Whit Weeks off their game is to be balanced. You know, how do you incorporate a great balanced offensive game plan? You can't rely too much on Kewan Lacey, which I thought they kind of did too much against Tulane. Not saying he's not great. He's been great for Ole Miss, one of the best running backs in the country so far this year. But you also do got to realize you got Damian Taylor and Logan Diggs back there who have been around. Diggs played at LSU. Damian Taylor, had a great run at Troy. They know the game. They have great size, can provide a few different things for Kewan Lacey that, when he's not out there, they can do. I think those tangibles are going to be really big. But Ole Miss has the opportunity to dictate the LSU defense early. But if they don't, then I think it's going to become a really big headache for Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin if they don't dictate things early and come out strong.
I agree. And I know Austin's not 100%, but his lack of ability to run the ball, even if he was 100%, would scare me for this game because when you have Trin, it feels like every play has some sort of life to it, even if he's about to get sacked because he has that, Bryce Young, Jaden Daniels ability to escape the pocket and run for the whole football field and not get caught. He just has a different level of speed and ability to extend these plays that really isn't common in quarterbacks. So to have that extra option, I think is going to benefit Lacey. I also saw a stat earlier today that Harold Perkins, when targeted in the passing attack, I think it's like an 80 or 90% completion rate against him. Yeah. So Daquan Wright, Kewan Lacey, even if Stribling's the guy who's coming across the middle, ball's got to get in their hands. And I think another part of the offense that we haven't seen as much is some of the really good screen passes to guys like Caden Lee and Trey Wallace, who we saw more commonly with Austin Simmons. You got to utilize those guys right away, get them integrated in the game, and keep LSU guessing. There's a lot of options who, you look at last year, it felt like Jackson Dart was always going to throw the ball to Trey Harris. On contrast, Chambliss has done a great job. Everyone's getting touches, everyone's getting receptions. So
great point.
You keep that, that game plan implemented. Make sure everyone's getting their touches. I think it's going to be a lot more difficult for the LSU defense to kind of keep these guys intact.
Can I throw a stat since you say that?
Yeah. Take your time.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Ole Miss has over 5 receivers with at least 100+ yards this season.
There we go.
Let me stat fact that real quick before I go out there. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, Ole Miss has over 5 receivers this year with over 100 receiving yards and 3 with over at least 200. So
damn,
the weapons are there, and I love that point you make. It seemed one-dimensional last year, and I think you can attest to that for Trey Harris, but as well, I think you can attest to the lack of a run game for Ole Miss last year, and the difference between last year's run game and this year is evident right now, and that opens up things for the pass game, which I think you're seeing more of. I think you're just seeing guys like Harrison Wallace and Deuce Alexander have great games, but as well, you can't forget about, Daquan Wright. You can't forget about Deshaun Stribling. You can't forget about Caden Lee because they're all very valuable threats to the Ole Miss offense. So that's a great point that you bring up, man.
Yeah, I'm pumped. And then the final aspect I want to hit on, we saw the offensive line struggle early in Kentucky. They had a much better second half there in Lexington, had a way better game against Arkansas, and looked complete all the way through against Tulane. Now is that test where they've been gelling for a couple of weeks. They're feeling good. They're starting to get a rhythm, and you're going to be facing easily the most athletic, most talented group of guys on the defensive front. How are they going to handle that? Are they going to give Kewan Lacey lanes to run through? Are they going to give Trin extra protection? we'll see. I also think adding Luke Haas, who's finally getting back into the rhythm and back to 100% in the mix, is almost like adding another offensive lineman. The dude's a big, just a heavy guy, to be honest with you. I think he's a much better run blocker than Daquan Wright is. And maybe he gets involved with the passing game too. So there's a couple things I think that benefit that Ole Miss offensive line, but this is easily going to be the biggest test yet of the season. And they're going to have to go out there and prove it. That's really all I have in terms of matchups. I do think getting into the score a little bit, I can see both teams scoring 30 plus, like Daylan said. Unfortunately, if Garrett Nussmeier gets in a rhythm and the wide receivers start clicking, this could turn out to be a shootout like the Arkansas game quickly. But my final score, I'm taking Ole Miss 31-27. I'm taking them to cover. And I believe, yes, that also hits the over, like Lane Kiffin recommended on Twitter earlier in the weekday.
This is by far the hardest score prediction I think for me so far this season. I think the Ole Miss offense has proven themselves. But I think that they're going to face a lot of different schemes. They're going to face a stealthy, a smart, a high IQ LSU defense this weekend that is coming in ready to attack. I think they've heard the noise. They've seen themselves be the underdog, even though they're the higher ranked opponent. I think that Brian Kelly also wants this game really bad. I think that the pressure is on him this year to win. And I think coming into Oxford and doing that, it would be a big statement win for him. So I think this is going to be a fun one. I think the Ole Miss offense versus the LSU defense is going to be a heck of a matchup. And I think the LSU offense versus the Ole Miss defense is going to be a fun one too. But the big thing for Ole Miss defensively is, can they make opportunities happen? They've done so over the last couple of games, but they haven't jumped on those moments. I think when those moments happen, you have to be ready to go. Whether that's jumping on a fumble, whether that's catching an interception, whether that's making a big field open tackle, whether that's blocking a field goal, it's still going to be the small things. It really is. And if Ole Miss is able to do that, I think they're going to win. I'm going to go Ole Miss 28, LSU 24 is my final score prediction. I think it's going to be a fun one. I think both teams have the tangibles to do great things moving forward throughout the rest of the season, but I think Ole Miss's ability right now to have a little bit more of a potent offense is going to lead them to victory. But I'm really intrigued to see what Garrett Nussmeier does against the Ole Miss defense. They've got a lot of talk right now. The Ole Miss defense really has struggled, and I think that they have the opportunity to come in and really shut some noise down, and they have to be ready for it. They really do. I think that everyone's kind of focusing on this game this weekend in terms of the schedule, and they have to be ready to show up. So it's going to be a fun one. I think Jaden Yates, shout out to him, had a great game last weekend against Tulane. He's going to have to be another star. They're going to have to help TJ Daugherty out in the linebacker room. And the edge rushers have to get a sack this weekend. Back-to-back games with no sacks recorded. Ole Miss has to bring Garrett Nussmeier down, not only to build confidence and momentum for themselves, but to build confidence and momentum in the stadium. When the PA announcer yells third down, you want to give something to fans to get loud about. So when the next drive comes and you're back on the field, they feel like they have a reason to actually get up, and not for no reason at all. So it's going to be a fun one. This is, what college football is all about right here. And I'm going to enjoy it so much Saturday.
It's going to be a blast day. LSU Ole Miss, 2:30 p.m. Be streamed on ABC. Like we said, the flyover is going to take place before kickoff. It's going to be awesome. Please, as always, leave a like, subscribe, and comment. We appreciate you guys listening. Hotty toddy and go Rebs.